All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another part of our open source power-up series. This time, we're going to talk with Dennis about his project Fluent Assertions. But first things first, if during the webinar you have any questions, then feel free to drop them in the chat. We will try to address them as we go. Or if they better fit at the end, then we will ask them at the end. This webinar is going to be recorded, so if for any reason you need to drop out, feel free to continue watching afterwards. And to give a little retrospective to what we already discussed in the first episode, I will make it quick this time. We at the in the .NET department and our advocacy team especially, we noticed there is a certain issue in the .NET community with open source, and we want to support our dearest open source maintainers, and that is especially with this program, so power-upping the .NET open source ecosystem, which includes, first of all, for the hand-picked maintainers that we have each month, we will have a new one. We're going to sponsor them with $100 per month for a full year. We also want to give a platform and raise awareness, which is exactly what we're doing right now. So Dennis will join us in a minute. And we also want to share our strengths, which is in certain circumstances, we can help with profiling, for instance. Martin is a genius on that. We can create graphical content, help with CI pipeline and all that. And also plugins, which is very interesting for me always. And as if you have seen the previous episode when we had Jeremy Skinner live here with his project Fluent Validation, so it's all about Fluent. There we also developed a plugin which can help you with using Fluent Validation. This time it's very much the same actually, and I would like to bring on Dennis now onto the stream. And hi, Dennis. Welcome.
Hello.
I hope you're fine.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Matthias.
Great. And let's have a quick chat. So you are the maintainer of Fluent Assertions. What exactly is that for people who never heard about it?
It is a very stupid little library, which
it's a great library.
Sorry, yes, of course, it's an awesome library. I try not to be biased. That I started 10 years ago with a colleague of mine, Martin Obdam, to try to make the assertions in unit tests, because I'm a TDD guy, test-driven development guy, try to make my assertions as clean and intention revealing as possible. This is 10 years ago. Right now, the last 2-3 years, I have the help of Jonas Nierup from Denmark, extremely active right now, working hard on version 6. And for some reason, it has become very popular. I don't understand why. We just crossed the 80 million downloads. So yeah, clearly I'm pretty, I'm honored, proud as well. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I see a pattern right there. Fluent Validation, Fluent Assertions, both are quite popular. I think on which NuGet download page you are? I mean, if you sort it by downloads.
You mean like the most popular ones?
Yes, yes.
Around 25. It varies between 20, place 20 and 25.
Ah, okay. And how much downloads is that since the first version?
80 million.
80 million.
We just crossed 80 million last weekend. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't get 1 cent per download. That would be awesome. No, but it has been, I'm proud. I can't say any otherwise. I mean, I never expected this. It's popular, of course. And I get good feedback. A lot of contributions the last year or two. A lot of major changes, like significant changes. I mean, today I saw a pull request from somebody that actually wrote some kind of algorithmic approach of finding matches and everything. I had to even go into, into the science and algorithms area, which I didn't study for. So that's interesting. You learn new things every day.
It seems like a really vital open source project, at the least. Yeah, I also created my pull request yesterday, fixing a couple of documentation things.
Yes, yeah.
But let's
Thank
not
you for
talk
that.
about that. We will focus on actually using the project. We can share your screen now, and just as a can I share your screen already?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. And as a just for everyone else, what we do is basically going through a couple of things that are good for beginners to know, but not only that, also some things like how you can extend assertions, right? I think that was on your list. And also a couple of methods that are the most popular ones, I think.
Yeah,
Is that
sure.
right?
Yeah, I have a whole list, and it's up to you to decide when to stop. Otherwise, I'll go nuts with my examples. So I think one of the most simple examples is what people used to do. So as in this little example, I hope it's really readable. Yes, it is. I have a calculator, which is a pretty stupid example, and it can calculate a percentage. So I want to verify that, I don't know, what comes out of that is like 5% or some, I think it's a display value, yeah? So what you did in the past is something like assert equals, and then I always had to wonder like, okay, no, it's not is equal, it's even, what is that? Equals, or are same, I think it's are same. And I always confused like what should go first. My natural thing is to say we should do this and then 50%. Okay, and then you can see it like, oh, wait a second, it's the other way around. So it's funny because I'm using JetBrains Rider, which is not a coincidence. Well, it is a coincidence. It's just a great tool. That it already tells you what's wrong here. Because if you run this test, it will give you, I'm running it now, it will tell you something like, okay, where's the output of this test? Oh, it failed. It doesn't even tell me what is wrong. That's funny. I wasn't even expecting that. It failed. It doesn't even tell me what's wrong, which is not what I expected. I think it even tells you usually like it's expecting some value. Maybe I should revert it. Should make a difference. You'll probably catch my drift. Let's run it again. No, it just says failed. Wow. That's even less than I expected. Because in this case, I'm using MS test. And yeah, my natural thing is to say, you know what? I want to say that this thing, and I need to install Fluent Assertions, so I'll install it 5.10.3. In the background, it should be, okay, yes. I have to add the namespace, sorry. A good start. Yes, is this one, should be.
That sometimes has some quirks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Should
but
be.
ultimately it should work.
Yeah. Now I should be able to run it again. And it gives me some up. Oh, success. Yeah. So now what happens if it's not correct, like 5%? And I like to create my test first. So now it actually tells me it expected the percentage display value to be 5% with a length of 2, but 50 has a length difference. So it gives you a lot more information. So not just like the difference between the current string representation of this percentage and what I'm expecting, but it even gives you the value of this parameter, which is quite useful. Jeremy D. Miller, who you may know from Martin and what is the other one? One of the IOC containers, used to say like keep out of the debugger hell. And his statement was that you should actually, you don't need to be in the debugger just to be able to understand why your test fails. And that's one of the ideas behind that. It should be completely clear what's wrong here. And that's why I like that. It's Fluent. You said it, Matthias. Some people love Fluent API. Some people hate it, actually. I've seen people that hate it. Structure map. Thank you, Ron. That was what I was looking for. I get the comments on the fly. I get autocomplete in the session. But this is a simple example. Let me go to a more complicated example. I have
with the previous one, right, with MS test, you basically would end up debugging and seeing, okay, what exactly is the difference? You have the failing experience, but you don't have the, okay, what exactly is wrong experience. And with this short string, it might be obvious what's wrong, but especially also if you have like with the index, if you have a longer string, you know at which point something is wrong. I mean, the first 20 characters could be the same.
Yeah, exactly.
You really want it to be helpful with finding the issue.
Yeah, this is what you get if you use MS test. expected 5, actually 50%, which is indeed okay. And with these short strings, as you say, it's completely obvious. But if it becomes bigger, then it usually is not that trivial. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So it's a bit of aesthetics. It's a bit of taste, obviously. And it tries to make it as clear as possible. And you can debate whether you like that, but yeah, I mean, this is the whole point of the library. I look at a bit more complicated example. I have this class called car info with lots of properties. And then I have a test, and I have 2 car infos, an actual and an expected. Now, how do I compare this? Sure, I can do something like actual.brand should be expected.brand, and it should give me probably a pretty clear message that it's okay. Is it both a Mercedes? Yes. So I have to continue for line by line. That's not really what I like. I can also do something like should be expected. Does this succeed or does this fail? It fails. Why does it fail? And it just tells me like you get the whole, you get the whole car info with all the properties are being dumped but found looks the same at first glance. So then why does this not work? The reason why this does not work is because I'm actually doing a normal equality check. Like .NET has this equal methods, and you have also the equatable interface. What I'm saying here is just rely on what .NET does out of the box. So what does the equals implementation of a class do? Reference equality. So it's probably just comparing references, and they're not the same objects, they're different objects. There's another one which is called be same as, which is used to emphasize or verify that these are actually the same objects. So if I run this, I expect it to fail. Yes, it gives me the same generic generic output. Expected actual to refer to some kind of object with all the properties in there doesn't really help. If I would compare them directly, I guess it will succeed. No surprise there. Now it becomes interesting. So what do I do then to quickly compare all these properties without me having to do it one by one? That's where this powerful, very powerful method comes out of it. I'm saying the actual should be equivalent to the actual implementation. And now it tells me expected property actual model, which is a string, to be C350E, etc. Expected property to be 6. So it actually shows me the diff. How does it work? It does a deep analysis of the 2 objects and tries to compare the properties by name. So if the expectation has a property called brand, it will look for a similar property on the actual and try to compare the values. And it goes quite far here, by the way. I tend not to do this. I don't actually use the actual runtime type. Quite often, I don't really care about all these properties, but my tests need to test specific elements. So what I usually do is create anonymous object and say, I want to verify that just the brand is something like this. I don't care about the other properties because my test should focus on one thing only. If I run this test, it will actually tell me, did I compare? Yeah. I expected brand to be Volvo, but Mercedes has a length of 8. So it's ignoring everything else. And this is what I mean when you do contract testing. You're not actually using this runtime production, like a class from your actual runtime code, but you're saying, no, I have a test. Especially if you practice TDD, you start with defining the expected behavior. You're expecting something from this method that returns you the actual value. And the only thing for this particular test case is that I care about the brand, which is nice, by the way, because that's the whole point. Make sense?
Volvo is really nice.
Both are nice, actually.
Yeah.
German versus Sweden, yeah.
It's quite an interesting method. I remember a time when we were using at my previous company machine specifications, and if I'm not mistaken, they had a similar method. But I also remember that we in some way had to tweak it. I don't remember the specifics, but this equivalent method, how it's called in your case, is really powerful because you don't need to define everything else, so you can really just focus on that one scenario you want to test, and that's it. But just to repeat basically. So B relies basically on the equals implementation.
Correct.
The same, or B same as is for equality. I mean reference.
Reference
Same
equality.
reference.
Yeah. And then you have B equivalent.
And B equivalent for basically like a
loosely coupled comparison.
Loosely coupled way of asserting
correct.
using.
And this one, there's a lot of power behind that. As an example, I can also show you something with collections. So
I know this is really powerful. One thing I want to drop in, but you can also answer at a later time. What happens with cycles?
Ooh.
I think it needs to handle that, right?
It does handle that. So if you're comparing, I mean, in this particular example, you have like just a couple of simple properties, but this every property itself can be another type, or a collection, or a dictionary, or a record. Like a C#9 that points to other objects. And of course, since it's like a lot of things are reference types, it can point to itself. So this method is smart enough to detect cyclic references. You can also choose, there's several options which you can add to the line here, where you can say like ignoring cyclic references, or which is the default. Sorry, the default is throw on. No, actually, the default is to throw on reference on cyclic reference. But you can also say I want to do infinite recursion if you really want to, which could be very expensive also time-wise. We had complaints about that, but it's pretty smart about it. I mean, we dog food this stuff, of course, on all our projects that we work on. So we do tend to find most of the more painful scenarios. But true, yeah. Right?
So it is used in production. Good that we cleared that.
Yeah, somebody needs to. I mean, I could have set up a bot that downloads it many times to get to that 80 million. But yeah. So if you look at collections, it's also interesting. Like you see the subject, which has 3 string properties, which is a collection. I can do the same thing here. I can say shoot, and there's a lot of methods. I can compare expectation, run it. And I guess it should succeed. Where is that? Here, there it is. It succeeds because those 2 collections are the same. I could even say it should be the same as, which obviously will fail because they're not the same collections. They're just 2 different arrays. But sometimes you don't care about the order. In fact, I would say that most collections, unless you use an array, you don't really care about the order, especially not in tests. So you can also do equivalent to with, for instance, this expectation, which is in the wrong order. So you're basically saying this collection and that collection should be equivalent, and that will succeed. It will succeed because I don't care about the order. And by the way, every object can itself be another object, and it's smart enough to go through traverse the whole path. If you do care about the orders, you can say something like options with strict ordering. Then it should fail. Didn't test this? Yes, it should fail. Now it's going to say, hey, I expected the first item in the subject, this one, to be TypeScript. Correct, because that's what I'm expecting. So you can be pretty specific, and it also tells you, like, because as I just noticed, it's pretty powerful. It provides you some information, like always be strict about the collection order. Don't do automatic conversion between datetimes to string, and include all non-private properties. So it's very powerful. I mean, the documentation section on the Fluent Assertions website is quite extensive. That gives you a lot of flexibility. You can even do it with strict ordering for a specific property if you want to, or say it should be a specific order for certain types. There's so many overloads, I'm not even going to show you there. It's just too much. But I refer to the documentation for that.
I just saw there's also a because parameter that you can specify.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even show you that. Let me go back to the simple one. Like here. No, let's take an even more simple example. The first one. Let's say we say because we want to ensure our code does what it is supposed to do. So now if this test fails, you get even more information, expected percentage, blah, 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 because we want to ensure our code does what it's supposed to do. I don't see a lot of people use it. I use it when I think it's more important to understand why this test fails, because quite often it's completely obvious, especially if you have the name of the variable there. But it's quite easy to do that, and you don't have to use. You can actually add because. It doesn't make a difference if you really feel like it's more readable. But the end it trims automatically.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, yeah, because we want our code because we love. We can also do something like this because we love. And again, I wash your back, you wash my back. It also works because we love JetBrains. So you have parameters there.
That's pretty cool. Also, actually, in this case, you can decide if you like to show the parameter hints, for instance. Me personally, I show them only in specific cases, and most of the time have them
those ones
have them hidden, right? But actually, with Fluent Assertions, you can just decide which one fits better and add because or not, and it's trimmed. That's cool.
Yeah, because this, yeah, exactly. And I mean, you can clearly see the variable names or the parameter names, but if you do a pull request review, you don't see this information anymore. And then it may make a difference. That's sometimes more, yeah.
Generally, I'm also in favor of using argument names specifically for that purpose, because you can still read it in other tools that don't have syntax highlighting and all this fancy stuff. But yeah, true, very true.
Yeah. So some other examples. Here, this one, some date. Well, who loves this? I mean, what does it say? Okay, now with writer, it's annoying because it ruins my demo. It's pretty clear. Now I can say things like the should be, I don't know, before or after, something like that. You can even do it directly. It should be, and I'm using a slightly different syntax, like the 25th of February, 2021 at 13:47, something like this. You can do this, which is again, I love Fluent APIs. It's a nice extension to make your dates and times a bit more fluid. You can even say like it should be as local or as UTC, because by default it doesn't have a kind. I'm gonna try to report it.
Is that part of Fluent Assertions? I never have seen that before.
That's indeed part of Fluent Assertions.
Oh, very, very nice.
Yeah. And of course it's 47, so let's make it 46. See what happens if we run the same test again. It will say it found, yeah, indeed, quite easy. Yeah, it's nice. And by the way, you can take it quite far actually. You can even do something like, and I have a nice example here. What about this? So now I'm chaining things. In this case, I'm saying, okay, this date should be after the 1st of February 2021 and have the year 2021 and be an unspecified, which means you can go quite far. I see a lot of people, put this on separate lines, but you don't have to, because it's, everything is chainable. You just do .and, and then you have everything here, have hours, years, close to, less than, quite far.
So with the and, you're basically going back to the moment after the first should, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the and returns you the object that exposes the be after, or the have year.
How exactly does that affect the exception message? And also another question would be, in case two of them are failing, would you include both as an exception message, or is it just the first?
No, in this case, the first one will fail. So the first one, if this would be, for instance, 2022, it will immediately fail at this point. It's not like it's going to propagate everything. See, it found, to be after this date.
I received the same question with something I'm working on, and it's a good question actually.
There's something which could be interesting, but I don't think it will really work here. You can do something which I wasn't planning to show you, assertion scope, which is a trick to say that you do not want to have this method fail, or the first assertion should not immediately fail. It should just collect everything at the end. But I'm pretty sure that this not really works as expected. No, it just fails on the first one. But you can use that, like if you do this, you make it separate statements. So
Yes.
change this into some date, because that sometimes happened. Should have, sorry, editing the file. Normally, and it would be nice if it now starts to fail, but yeah, oh, typo, sorry, typo. The screen is so big. No, it doesn't do that. That's a shame. Normally, it should do that. Yeah. Normally, the idea is that you can actually. Yeah. No worries. You just broke my demo. It doesn't matter. That could actually be a bug that we need to fix, because the idea is if you use an assertion scope, you're basically saying that all the assertions that happen within the scope should not fail immediately. You want to get all the messages at the same time. This is also what the equivalencies thing that you just saw uses under the hood. I think there's a bug. I know that Jonas is listening with me, so he probably will capture some notes to improve the library. I mean, every time you show to somebody, it will you'll find new things. But the chaining is quite nice. You can also do chaining, by the way, in a different way.
If I'm not mistaken, this assertion context, what you wanted to show with a new assertion, assertion scope. If I'm not mistaken, some other testing libraries have introduced that as well, right? Which is, I mean, it's a pretty good idea. I've seen that with Xunit.
What do you mean? Oh, so like that. It has something like that, but it's not really visible. And to be fair, I don't really like static mutable state, like in this example, because it's thread static.
Yeah.
But given that usually the code that you put inside here, if you want to have multiple asserts, does not actually go from one thread to the other. You're not doing async within your assertion. So usually it's safe, but it's not a pattern that you normally would use in other production code. But it's documented somewhere on the documentation site how this works. So I recommend using it. But it's a niche thing.
Yeah.
You usually use this if you build your own extensions. Yeah.
Agree, yeah.
Okay. So this is chaining with AND, which I just showed you. This is the cleaner one. There's also versions where you chain with something else. So let's look at this example here, the first one. I have a couple of strings in an array, and I'm saying that collection should contain one item only, and that item should end with script. So this acts on the collection. This actually returns you the only option the only object you're expecting, and that should end with script. Well, obviously this will fail. It will fail because expect here it is. It should contain a single item but found 4 items. So let's say I would change the test and say something like do it like this. There's only one item in the list, and the first part should succeed, but the second one should fail. See, expected strings to end with script, but C# is too short. So you can chain that. It's not really useful, but if you take examples like dictionaries, you can do something like this. You have a dictionary, with 4 items in there. You can say this dictionary should contain the key C#, which value should be 1. And again, you don't have to do this, but you can do it. So is this one? Yes, the test 2 succeeded. So if I would say,
I'm gonna switching to that, because I'm doing that quite often, like checking if a certain key is contained in the dictionary, and then I have basically a line where I repeat that, where I actually get the value from the dictionary using that same key, and that would clean up some code.
Like this. I see people do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there should be something like should be 1. The problem with this, it's fine, but if this key doesn't exist, you get a weird key not found. I think it's still okay-ish, because I think you get a pretty clean. Let's set it to. Let's put it to something that doesn't exist. I think it will still tell you the key is missing. I see the given key was not present in the dictionary. It's not that bad, actually.
Well, for me, what I usually end up is still with the contains key, but I don't follow with the which value. That is basically what I do. But yeah, I think for missing key, they introduced that only in one of the recent versions, I think it was a pull request also from the community to actually show the key that was not found, if I'm not mistaken.
Ah, see, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. In the previous version, you just got a key not found exception, and then you had to debug the code. Yeah, such a simple thing.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, at some point, maybe this library is going to be obsolete. So you never know.
I don't think so.
No. And here you get like at least you see the whole collection. You see the name of the variable again, the variable. You use JavaScript. You see the different key, and they say it is supposed to contain a key. Again, small things.
Yeah.
One other example that I see and was asked a lot is sometimes you want to continue your assertion in a separate line. In this case, we're saying this collection contain a single item, and this single item I want to do more assertions on. Like if you can't do chaining, you just say, give me a subject, I assign it to a variable, in this case single, and it should start with. You can also do that. Especially if you have more, let's say this single actually contains an entire object that you want to do some specific assertions on, you can do that. It's kind of the same thing as which and which value. It's just, yeah, this does the exact same thing. It just doesn't read as fluent. But it's debatable because I don't really like this one either, but the community asked for it.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. More examples, and stop me when I need to stop. Something about awaiting. So I have this async class, which has some async method, which obviously is not used here because writer is telling me it can be deleted. It's that code. So how would I somehow say that this some async method? Yeah, I can't do shoot. It's not doing anything useful here. Oh, shoot. Because yeah, it's just. I mean, what does this thing return? It's a method that returns a task of string, and it doesn't really understand task directly. So the only options I have here is that it should be of type. Should be. These are generic assertions you always get on anything.
And here it's also quite important, at least I found that is helpful, if you show the completion list again, then at the end of the line you can actually see what kind of assertion this particular method is related to. So for instance, for collections you will see collection assertions, and that under certain circumstances also helps finding the correct one. I'm not exactly sure, but it would also help with the is equivalent, for instance, which should be shown as collection.
Yeah, it works.
If I'm not mistaken.
It works, and I can even say it should be equivalent to this collection of strings.
All right.
But it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. I don't even know it will fail. Oh, it will fail. Why does it fail? Expected async class some async method. So you see the whole line of type string to be a collection, but it was a synth. Yeah, of course, because you're actually building. This is an async method, and of course you can do something like this: await, and then tell. I have to make it async task, and do something like this. Put brackets around that, and that will work. Then it's all saying,
Dennis,
yeah.
I'm going to show you something. Revert that for a moment. I mean, we're both people who are very how can I say, curious about doing things in a faster way, right? And if you write await now here, and now it complains basically because you can't await the whole expression, right?
Yeah.
And if you use expand selection from here a couple of times,
expand selection,
or wait,
like this. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like this.
Yeah, exactly. The first way would be to use a template and do parentheses around it. The other way, but I'm not sure, it should work as well. If you remove that again and move your cursor to after some async method, right? And then now dot and parentheses, as if you would type parentheses. Type par and then complete. Try that.
No.
No, par.
No.
P-A-R.
Probably because
it might not show, but it should complete, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
What is just? It did something. What did it do?
Yeah, the first.
Yeah. So it wraps that statement. Yeah. I see what it does. It wraps it between brackets. Braces, sorry, braces.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's a nice
Well,
trick.
unfortunately, not in front of the weight, but I will also keep a note for that.
But this
But
is
yeah,
probably also, yeah, if I wouldn't pollute this statement, but this thing, I can just say make the method async task. That's nice actually.
yeah,
But that was not the point.
note
My
taken.
point is that how would you then, let's say you want to verify that this method completes within 10 milliseconds. How would you do that? Because you cannot really call shoot on it. I mean, if I now call shoot on it, like here, what I'm getting back is something like string assertions, because this method returns a string, obviously as a task. That's not what I want. So what I can do is something like, let me copy paste something here from my example to make it a bit more clearer. I can actually do this. I define a func which returns a task, and I pass in async class some async method. And now I can say act should complete within 10 milliseconds. So let's see if it does that. No, it didn't. This is one way of doing it. There's another way which is more fluent, but that's an option if you want to, which is something like this example, which is pretty long. There's an extension on any class that's called awaiting, in which you actually invoke an action, and then this will return you the object that you want to. It depends what you prefer. But this will do the exact same thing, but then in a single line.
I prefer this one.
So you call awaiting as an extension method on this async class. You pass in, you get a reference to the async class. You call some async method, and that what you get back is something you can run a couple of assertions on. You'll find some not throw, not throw after sync, throw async. So there's a couple of specialty ones which we use a lot. That's one way of doing it, yeah. All right. Makes sense to you, Matthias?
Yeah, definitely. I missed one question, but I will follow up what exactly this question was about. I will ask later again.
Yeah. And I see some questions like, what about performance? In general, if I can answer that, performance is an issue, as in some people sometimes report on that. We use benchmark.dat to run a performance test as part of our CI build. Especially this deep, graph analysis can be susceptible to performance issues, which we optimized many times before. When we get comments about that, we do take it seriously and we try to improve that. One of the examples is like if you look at the example of collection equivalence, just imagine this is a byte array, very long byte array, because you've been comparing some kind of image conversion algorithm. In that case, be equivalent to is smart enough to understand that a byte array is not something you want to do a loose comparisons of. It's supposed to be a blob, and we treat it as such. There's also something which I forget to mention. It's also good to understand, because a lot of people get confused about that. Is the
maybe Dennis? One question at least, but keep that in mind. What you wanted to show. There was a question: can I have async class object as a singleton?
Can I have it as a singleton? So this particular
With
example.
Yeah, exactly that part.
Well, I mean, I guess you would have a method called instance. I mean, if it's a static object, then it's probably not. Then it's not possible. Then you would have to use the previous example where you build an action or lambda statement with a func. Then you can do that. But if you implement a singleton like with the instance method, which is the common example, yeah, then this just works. If this async class would have a static property that gives you an instance of that one. Okay. But singletons in unit tests will quickly fall apart, especially because if you use XUnit as I do, all your tests run in parallel, and you may end up with all kinds of weird side effects because one test runs in parallel and your singleton is suddenly influencing other tests. So I started to stay away from that.
Oh, by the way, that's a little bit of history I'm going to drop in here. Do you happen to know why? I think at least until certain versions, NUnit didn't create a new test class or not a new instance of the test class per test run. but they only created the test once, so that one that you have attributed with test fixture.
Mm-hmm.
And XUnit actually does create the test for each and individual test method. And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I found the answer in this X patterns unit testing book. Not sure about the title, but something.
XUnit patterns.
Yeah, exactly. And it was written that one of the authors, I think last name is Newkirk, was trying to convert JUnit to NUnit, and they didn't. Initially, they didn't know what to make of this. I mean, why is this test class instantiated multiple times? And then they ended up with that. So yeah, it's written as a little.
I also
History.
think XUnit was one of the earliest ones that supported parallel execution, and they really thought hard about it, like making sure that you can define per class, like all the tests within the same test class would never run in parallel because they assume you might be reusing some state, but other test classes do run in parallel, and you can tweak that a little bit. It's pretty advanced. Some people get a bit confused with this stuff, but it's pretty well defined, pretty well documented on the XUnit side. Yeah. So let's talk about extensibility a bit.
There was sorry, there was one more question, but probably also short to answer. I want to avoid doing a new async class in all my tests.
Strange. I want to avoid doing a new in all my tests. Well, of course you can just do this.
Use constructor or
something like that.
Or field
By the way, if you do C#, you don't need to do the new anymore. You just do this. That will work as well.
Exactly the reason why it works in XUnit, right? Or
yeah, because if I would create multiple tests here, I don't have a template set up for this. I think test 2 and do something with this async class as well. XUnit will not run those two tests in parallel because they're part of the same scope. It's called a class.
Okay, ask us that we can go on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hopefully that clarifies a little bit. This I can leave some comments or some URLs where you can read more about this stuff, but it's pretty advanced. But yeah, does it answer your question, Matthias?
Yes.
Oh, now he tells us to ignore the question. Okay, cool. Doesn't matter. So let's look a little bit at extensibility. I have some examples. I pre-baked this, obviously. Let's say that we want to have some code that tests an actual HTTP pipeline, which we have here. So I have some plumbing. I'm using some test data builder patterns to build up an actual HTTP pipeline in ASP.NET Core. In this case, I have a little controller, which is, where is it? Probably at the bottom. Oh, this module. It's in. This is kind of a module, and there's a controller, HTTP controller, ASP.NET Core controller, which has some kind of routes. And I have a test that really wants to spin up that whole thing. I have an example for that. So here, I'm building an actual host using ASP.NET Core. I'm getting a client, and then I'm sending messages. In this case, I'm doing get async, and I show you the whole URL because for me, that's a contract, so it's important to show you that. And now I have things like should be okay, and have reason, and have headers, which is an extension to an HTTP response message. So how does that work? That's actually pretty simple. This should method is defined here. So I have an extensions class, and the only thing it does is an extension to an HTTP response message. What does it return? Some class called HTTP response message assertions. And you can see that here. You can even see that like writer will tell you exactly what you return here. And this message, I create an instance of it, pass in the response. And then I have a method called here, be okay. It's very simple. It takes a because and the because args because, yeah, that's how we define it. And then I can say, I'm executing assertion. This is kind of the internal Fluent API to build your own extensions. And it's pretty powerful. If you look at the exact, because yeah, Fluent Assertions, the code of the library is also meant as a way to demonstrate how I think about quality, high quality code. And the same applies to the unit test. So the unit test itself, I regularly look at my own unit test to figure out, oh yeah, that was the specific syntax that I want to support. Oh, my son just walked in.
Say hi.
Ik word opgenomen op YouTube. Oh. So this is pretty simple. You can do for condition, which is actually what you want to test. Then you can say the reason for this assertion. You just pass in the because and the because args, and then the failure message. And this is interesting. There's a couple of nice tricks. So you can say expected between brackets context. This will be replaced with the variable name. So if you look at this example, and I run this, and I hope it succeeds. No, because I've been cleaning up. I think I have been changing some code here and there. That's a shame. I should have done that. But the point is that this will be replaced with the variable. So if you look at the example here, it would say response. If I would change this, it would actually use a different name. And if you didn't provide any name, or it couldn't deduce it from the stack trace, that's also possible. It will just use a default, which also happens to be response. So it will say expected, response to be okay. The reason, if there's a reason, so it will inject this because thing that you just can provide optionally, and otherwise return the other status code. Now, and this is the trick to have this AND thing. This is just a stupid method or stupid class that adds the AND state and returns the same thing. It returns itself, basically. So that's a pretty simple example. Now, why is this? This is necessary for Fluent Assertions to understand that when it traverses your stack trace, to be able to figure out what's the variable name, like in this case, this response thing here.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it goes, basically, if this one fails, it inspects the stack trace. It may actually find this BOK method or some other code, and basically by marketing it as such, you tell Fluent Assertions, you know what, this is my custom assertion. Don't include it in the stack trace.
Don't show it, yeah.
Yeah. And I have a couple of other examples, which is looks a bit more complicated. The reason phrase needs to equal the expected reason, using invariant ignoring casing. But same principle here. I should probably just verify that there is a reason phrase, because it tells me that this can be nil. Yes. So you should actually have an additional condition here, like for condition response dot reason phrase is object. And I can say fill with, expected something, and I can say, but it's empty. And then I can say, then continue. So you can even chain this with multiple assertions. It's pretty powerful if you want to.
Looks good. One question that I have is, this custom assertion type you basically introduced to know what kind of methods can be shown now.
Correct.
I mean, it's similar to collection assertions, object assertions. Is there a rule of thumb, let's say, when extension methods make sense and when you write them inside that assertions class? I mean,
yeah, that's a good question.
There's nothing stopping me from making those methods an extension class and just marking the HTTP response assertions, except maybe that we would need to make the response public, which currently is private, if I remember correctly.
No, there's a difference, because in this case, this should method is new. Fluent Assertion does not understand out of the box what to do with a response, with an HTTP response message. Has no built-in support. So it's totally fine to define your own custom should extension method, like I do, and return some class. And by the way, I forgot you can actually do something like this. Reference type assertions, and then return yourself, which I forgot to do. Can I not do this right now? Sorry, it should be actually this part. You can do that. I have to rewrite a little bit, because then you get not just the extensions I have, but also match and be null and all these standard things.
Okay.
So that's an additional thing.
A couple of things.
Yes, exactly. There's plenty of examples in the documentation. But in this case, I can define that. But if I look at another example, numeric types, a magic number is an integer, and integers are built in. I can do things like be match, be negative, be positive, greater than. There's a whole bunch of extensions, greater or equal. So Fluent Assertion already has something like that. If I would define my own extension that acts on numerous, the compiler will start to complain like, hey, you know what? I've found two extension methods called shoot, and yeah, I don't know what to do, which one to choose. And in that case, creating your own extension method doesn't make sense. But what you can do is extend the extensions. What? Yes. So it becomes a bit of C# syntax thing. But what I'm doing here is I've defined a method called b prime number, which is an extension of the built-in Fluent assertion numeric assertions on ints. So I basically get the parent, and every object of every assertion class has a subject property which I can use to extract. And now I'm doing something like, okay, you know what? I'll first verify that this subject is actually an int. And if not, I complain about that. If it's an int, then I'm going to cast this subject to an int because the subject is actually comparable, which just happens how Fluent Assertions works. And now I can do continue with a condition and even an assertion. And the condition, of course, is here prime number generation, which is pretty ugly. Copy pasted this from Stack Overflow. And that means that now I have access to everything that comes out of the box or my extension. You can see it from the icon that this is an extension. That's one way of doing it, which is pretty nice.
Looks really great.
It's pretty simple to create your own extensions. I mean, a lot of people do that. I think there's about 100, 150 different packages that build on top of Fluent Assertions. And on practically every project that I worked on where we use Fluent Assertions, there's always some custom extensions on that, because you have some domain-specific concepts there.
You know what I would really like, and this is currently a limitation of C#, because you can write extension methods only in static classes. And sometimes it would be really cool to have extension methods just in a single test class, where I need it, because there I write, let's say, 100 tests. Okay, you could argue about splitting them up, but I want to write an extension method just for this particular test class, which is also private. That would be really cool. But they have this limitation, I think, for performance reasons for the compiler, that only static classes can declare extension methods. So yeah, unfortunately.
It may change. It may change in the future. Yeah, indeed. But in this case, it doesn't matter because it was designed for that. So these numeric assertions, if you would go to the implementation, I'm using the built-in decompiler feature of Rider. This is the actual code decompiled from the assembly. And you can see that this numeric assertions actually has a property subject, which is an incomparable. And that's why. So all these assertion clauses are designed for extensibility. That's why they're public. We make everything internal if we don't trust people to use it, because over the years, and Jonas is also one of the people that really think about backwards compatibility and breaking changes.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's public, people have used in the past. So whenever we break something, and like we're working on version 6, there's a lot of breaking changes there because we also try to break with the past and fix some mistakes, which can only happen with major releases. So we are very careful of exposing things that are not supposed to be exposed.
What is the? I do remember you have currently some pre-releases in the works.
Correct.
So next major release is when?
Good question. It's a question I get often. I think let's go to GitHub. The thing is with GitHub is that, with Fluent Assertion is that it is still something we do in our private time. So if you go to the releases, you can see like 6.0 alpha was released like January 7th. It depends when we finish it. I think we have at least 2 breaking changes that we want to finalize. As soon as those are done, that's probably the moment where we're going to release 6.0. So that's why it's an alpha. It's not a beta. It's not stable yet, so we can still change the API. As soon as I really embrace semantic versioning. As soon as it becomes beta, it basically means there might still be bugs, but we're not going to change the API anymore. So we're very close to that point. Yeah, that's the plan.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you can see 66 commits since January 7. So we're still actively adding features there. You can also see the face of Jonas here, who's very active. I can't even keep up with what he's doing. But yeah, and we get some really good contributions as well. Yeah.
Cool. Just a question. Have we been going through all of what you wanted to say? Because I know I do remember there's one thing we wanted to show.
Oh,
right?
Which one was that?
The plugin.
Plugin. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just as a reminder for everyone else, the maintainer we feature here in this format get the opportunity or get the choice basically if they want to have some help with memory profiling, graphical content, CI pipeline, or a dedicated plugin. And I was sitting down with Dennis for quite some time, and we discussed what could be done. And I did something. We didn't came to a conclusion actually. Yeah, it was all just, I don't know, brainstorming basically.
I haven't seen the result, so yeah.
But I implemented something, and you will tell me if you like it or not. And if not, I will just get it off the plugin store. So if you search for Fluent, then you should see it already. Yeah.
0 downloads.
0 downloads. Yeah. That's actually a lie because I downloaded it already.
Oh. Okay.
What does it say? Third party.
That is not safe to use. Oh, I have to restart it. Okay. In the meantime, this is where you find all the documentation, especially about the object graph comparison, which is the deep equivalency, goes quite far. A lot of information. Restart. Where is my writer? Here. Okay.
Very good documentation, in fact, I have to say.
Yeah, it took a lot of time to build. Fortunately, I get a nice pull request when there's typos or mistakes. Now it's also part of the main repo. So when people propose a change or introduce a new feature, we also ask them to actually update the documentation as part of the pull request and the release notes, so that everything is in sync. It took a couple of years to start, smoothing out this process. So what does the plugin do? Because I didn't know.
Let's see. But you have to be honest. Tell me if you don't like it. So let's see. First remove all of that, the complete method body. And the first thing I thought about was, let's say our method that we want to check is math.max. And you provide two values to that, 10 and 20, let's say. And what I really like, what I'm such a fan of, are postfix templates. And looking at writing tests, I thought, okay, maybe it's always good. I mean, you have the specific name subject that you always use for the subject that you want to test. So maybe in this case, it would be good to have a .result postfix template. So let's do that.
Then control or tab.
Oh. Yeah. And that will introduce that method that you specified before, and capture that variable in a result variable, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
The next thing is from here, just write should.
Should. Okay.
Should. Yeah. Complete. And we'll use result and then place the caret right afterwards. And now, yeah, let's do something, be prime number. And but there's something special about that actually. And I always like to think people have different preferences, right? Like you've shown with the end concatenation, so that you can continue writing your assertions. Me personally, I'm more a fan of writing a new statement. So the idea here is, if you jump to the next line, and I know it doesn't make any sense, but let's write result. Result, yeah, and then to string, let's say, and dot length. again. Yeah, and now this should, and do any other assertion again.
Like this?
Yes, yes. Just another assertion, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And now on the next line, write should again. Okay, and what it does now is taking the expression that you used before with the should as the initial value. So you can totally override that. I mean, it's selected, so you can.
Yeah. So if you have multiple properties, you can. Oh.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this case, that might not be a good idea. So maybe I can see if we can not show it for certain cases. But I thought, okay, at least that would be helpful to me.
Yeah, that's promising. Yeah. Okay, that's promising.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
But if anyone of you watching out there have any ideas where you say, okay, this would be cool to have IDE support with Fluent Assertions, can you please show me that? Then feel free, leave it in the comments, in the chat or something. Okay, but as far as that goes, I think we're done.
Cool.
Right? Do you have anything else?
No. I mean, check out the documentation. Reach out to me on Twitter or to Jonas. There's a Slack profile, but just go to the Fluent Assertions landing page and you'll find all the links that you need to be able to find the relevant information. There's nice buttons here where you can say like you can follow us. There is documentation. There's Stack Overflow. There's Slack that you can become part of the Fluent Assertions Slack community. Of course, GitHub. So yeah, there's plenty of places where you can reach us.
Do you still call yourself on Twitter Mr. Fluent Assertions?
Sometimes.
There was a time, at least.
Yeah, I changed it regularly. I mean, also have a blog, the Continuous Improver, and I sometimes call myself that, where I also talk about topics. Sometimes Fluent Assertions, sometimes about other topics. Yeah, like wider, obviously. Yeah.
So I would like to give people the opportunity to ask some questions, maybe. So now is the time. I hope you all liked it. This format, in particular this episode today. And yeah, especially about the format, I hope, I mean, follow up with the previous episode, maybe where we had Jeremy live here and talked about fluent validation. Also, keep an eye out for the next episode, which should be somewhere next month. So we try to align that with the monthly cycle, let's say. And yeah, but currently I haven't seen any questions. Let me just follow up on the private chat. Just gonna read that for a moment. Okay, yeah, I think we can close from here. I just gonna share my screen for one quick moment. Let's see, where is it? Share screen. Here. Oh, and you don't see anything?
I do see a question about Nuke, which obviously is a nice tool created by Matthias, and it is actually used in Fluent Assertions. So it's not a coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, we know for some time, that's true. Yeah. Okay, just to wrap this up here, and unfortunately now we have to. But if you have questions, like Dennis said, you can follow up on Twitter or on the GitHub repo if you have any questions. And Dennis, I would like to thank you for being on this show. Let's call it.
It was an honor. Yes, it was an honor.
And I hope everyone had a nice time, and see you in the next episode, basically. All right?
Cool.
So, thanks for joining.
Thanks for being here.